Hello and welcome to OHANA, where no family is left behind and no ancestor is forgotten. This is the show for the upliftment and healing of IPOCU families from the effects of colonialism through talk therapy. It's all about building stronger families, stronger community, and a stronger collective.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Convoy Satori.
And this is Calafia Sophia.
And this is season 1, episode 2. And again, this season is called Curse of Our Ancestors, but this episode will be the POC effect. Touching on the last show, I was starting work and everything, and now we got a lot of things changing with the coronavirus and a lot of adjustments around this time. Things are about to open back up here soon, but you got a lot of race issues popping up again, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
With police brutalities. I think a woman got killed in her home.
And then the guy that was jogging.
Yeah, and then he gets killed.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of race relations. We're purposely not saying names just to try to glorify the situations and whatnot. But you see a lot of things, even the fact on how there's a pandemic and this is a cleansing towards people of color,
right,
and all that
genocide.
Stuff like right, a genocidal attack with a virus, and you know, all these other different things that's going on. So it's just some very interesting times, to say the least, you know. So I find it's very awesome we get the chance to do this podcast while we're talking about transgenerational trauma, and this episode is on the effects it can have on people of color.
Yeah, and on this episode specifically, we're going to be discussing the effects of transgenerational trauma on POC communities and families. We live in a country with complex ties to trauma, and much has been passed down epigenetically. So the topics we're going to cover today are going to address the effect it's had on various POC communities. So we're going to be looking at, number one, what does POC mean, and specifically define IPOCU. I know you guys hear that in the beginning part of our podcast, so we're just going to lay that out. Then also the history of the race card. And then lastly, just to kind of wrap it up, I'm going to really dive into intergenerational traumatic effects amongst POCs in America.
So I guess just getting into it, what does POC mean? Or in other words, like Calafia said, you hear a lot of times in the intro, the IPOCU. Well, the POCU part is people of color united, but the I is indigenous people of color united. So, but the point is that people of color, it pretty much speaks for itself on the surface side, which is a lot of times it scientifically likes to get narrowed down to melanin, but
right.
Unfortunately and ignorantly, it people like to exclude quote unquote white people, as if white people have no melanin, and that is extremely scientifically false. The absence of melanin is actually albinos, and albinism, I think it's called.
Yes.
Is it albinism?
I think so. Albinism.
But it's a defect, and the physical defect is statistically highly found in actually people of color. A lot of African Americans have albino issues or whatnot, which is an absence of melanin. So a lot of white people aren't stricken with the disease of being albino. So to call white people an absence of melanin is, like I said, inaccurate and ignorant. So for us on OHANA, which is that we're all family, we're all connected under the sun on this planet, it includes white people also. That they're also inclusive with being people of color, because you have to, and this is what the indigenous aspect brings in with the I for IPOCU. You have to go back to the times before colonialism, when everything was tribal. Whether this was in Sparta, elements of Greece,
right,
all the indigenous, the Celts, you know, and so on and so forth. Before they became countries like Germany and France, there were tribal affiliations. And when those tribal people traded with the Indias, the Hindis, and going across into China or going down with different tribal affiliations in Africa, no one was calling anybody white or black.
No.
And
no, not at all.
No one was calling anybody, oh, you're a person of color. We're from the land over here where we don't have color.
Right.
You know, and I think an awesome movie that depicts this was 10,000 BC. You know,
one of my favorites.
I love that movie. And, you know, they're from up in the snow mountains and hunting the big old mammoths and stuff. And they would actually be classified as white.
Yeah.
But it shows how they journey more south into Middle Eastern and African countries or whatnot, you know, and they even alluded to that it was Egypt, you know, that people were being taken to build the pyramids with their mammoths. But that's beside the point. The point was, though, is how they can join together. They work together for a similar cause. And no one was saying, hey, white man,
right?
You know,
right.
Come with us, black man. You know, and they even showed how the quote unquote blacks had various tribal affiliations
with different, you know, genetic makeup and everything. You know,
everything.
Some that were tall, and big warriors, and some
the
that
shorter
were
people, yeah. And so it's just the very concept of people of color. You know, it's a more broad, widely accepted concept than what is socially and politically being used today. It's a lot of times to encompassate black and white, brown versus white, or, you know, well, Asians kind of denounce the whole race card things with being able to call them yellow.
And they're not even yellow.
And they're not even yellow. And the same thing with a lot of indigenous or Native Americans, you know, they expelled the race card on them too, which is being able to call them red. So we got rid of red, we got rid of yellow, but now we still have this brown, this black versus white. And so when we say people of color, a lot of times it involves Asians, Native Americans, browns, blacks, and excludes whites. But there's a different aspect we at Paradox Horizons like to take so that we can heal things, this transgenerational trauma, especially here in America, you know, the melting pot. We got a little bit of all of us in us, you know, meaning from all over the world, you can find genetically all these aspects in us here in this country.
Yeah.
And we're not going to heal things on an in-depth spiritual level, and I mean to the effect of even altering DNA, until we embrace all aspects of us. And so in a sense, our approach is that POC involves us all. But we have to reverse the colonialistic aspect, and that's where to highlight our indigenous natures. The senses of self that were tribal affiliated, the way that we collectively came together consciously embracing aspects of nature, but also, again, like stated, it was a collective consciousness that generated the way that we lived with nature, and therefore we created these tribes, these traditions that have these histories. But it's known throughout time, like the movie 300 glorified, that when outside effects or outside threats came, that's the purpose of the tale of 300, is that all those different areas were tribes.
Yeah.
But it was the Spartan tribe that stood up and eventually led to and created a unified Greece.
Right.
That what we know as today to be the country of Greece had to unify indigenous tribes together. And our perspective is that this is what's going to really bring us back home, and what we're even threatened with kind of today.
Yeah.
You know, the unemployment rate is skyrocketing.
Ridiculous. Highest since almost the Great Depression.
Since the Depression.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are dealing with having to redefine themselves outside of what the world characterized them as, the government characterized them as, leadership of man characterize them. And this is going to bring us back to more of a natural indigenous identification itself. But we feel like something that's gonna, what we're gonna meet head on is this race card thing. So like I said, the black, the white, the red, the yellow, and brown aspects of our indigenous nature being classified. So it just makes us ask, in order for us to get to the IPOCU, the indigenous people of color united, we have to deal with this race card thing. And we feel like, let's start from the beginning. So, and that's what the second aspect of the show is today, is kind of diving into the history of the race card.
Right, because most people, they think that when you say white or black, it's just purely based on physical appearance. I came across an article on the undefeated.com that was really laying out on how white immigrants weren't just, or, at that time, quote unquote, white immigrants weren't always considered white, and they weren't always acceptable. I just quoting him here in this article talking about how the story of European immigrants during that era became white enlightens us on our current political realities. That Italians, Greeks, Polish, Hungarian, other European groups at the time called new immigrants, they had to seek to overcome their, subordination or them being put down by showing through their behavior to be deserving of being considered white. So you had to be considered white. It was a label that was given, not something that you were just given based off your skin color. A quote that I just, really found to be interesting was actually done in 1911 by Henry Pratt Fairchild. He was an influential American sociologist, but he said about new immigrants, if he proves himself a man and acquires wealth and cleans himself up very well, we might receive him in a generation or two. But at present, he is far beneath us, and the burden of proof rests with him. They ultimately would have to meet this burden, and it was crucial to their success was that they were not considered black and that they had to actively help in maintaining a racist society. So
that's heavy.
Yeah, a racist society. So it's not just this, skin color versus skin color. It was like he even, laid out that you had to prove yourself to be white. And these are all these people who already came over with this, with a white tone, so it's like you have to gain wealth, clean up, and and then also
walk the walk and talk the talk.
Exactly,
basically.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
So it's just, when we look at this, it creates these race issues. It really reminded me of, when you're looking at the caste system inside of India, how you had, the Brahmins were at the very top, and then the untouchables were at the very bottom of the caste system, and then in between there, you had the, after the Brahmins were the warriors, and then, the farmers and merchants, and then the farm workers and servants and laborers. So it was just like this, on the bottom, you have this, the people of color being at this, a lot of times we're working these subservient type, jobs. And then you have this higher caste system that you're trying to attain to.
And I think what's interesting is that even with the caste system, that it's sort of like how this country, and even a lot of countries, were built, is that they had to have the laborers, the workers, And I remember, that's my alarm saying someone's at my front door. But they can just leave the package. But I can remember when looking into a lot of genetic testing that people were doing research on their backgrounds and looking up documents from when their great-grandparents first came into the stateside. And they were finding out how their Irish and Scottish ancestors were being classified in this country as colored. And so that basically is very interesting on how you find out how Henry Pratt Fairchild, which as you said was a sociologist. Mm-hmm. So the way that society scientifically works is creating this society. But when a lot of Irish and Scottish people came in, they were seen as coloreds.
Yes.
They were actually like along with where we kind of are looking at things. The more elitists, seeing them as coloreds. And I remember who was the WAPs. I think those were Italians. Yeah, because those were the foreigners that came over. Oh, you freaking WAP, is without a passport, is what it meant. So these foreigners coming over who would be classified as white today had to earn it. And a lot of ways that they earned it was to counter the people who were a little bit more melanated, if you will, So it was like this melanation war that was created, but the people who had lesser melanin within them scientifically, they kind of had a leg up in this game, to be considered white. So it's like almost like whiteness, the race card of whiteness was the product that's being sold. Across the world, that welcome to this free world in America where you can earn and work for whiteness.
Yeah.
And so you even find a lot of at the turn of slavery being over, these people who were classified as freedmen, who now slavery's over. I think it's in the 1910 census. In 1900s, that whole census category of freedmen disappeared because slavery's over.
Yeah.
And there's no more reason to delineate free people from enslaved people. But it stated that a lot of times that the freedmen were kind of like those who were mulattoes, and the mulattoes were people of color, indigenous people of color, who were mixing with Irish and Scottish and other foreigners, and therefore having lighter skin. So again, this lighter skin is giving you a leg up to be classified as white. But even without the characterizations, you see a lot of this in different countries. I think you have the same thing. They said is issues in South America and in Russia and other places that, the melanation of your skin can.
Brazil, they deal with it in Latin American countries. And then even on the flip side, you have those who come into America who are, again, labeled on the bottom side. They're like Jamaicans or Haitians or, darker, like Dominicans, that are automatically labeled as black. So just off of, your characteristics, and it's like because of their skin color, they don't even have that opportunity to go full on white. I
don't think it was meant for us to have the chance to.
It wasn't.
That the best chance that a quote unquote person of color within the social terms can earn is like a 40% whiteness card.
Right.
You get your degree, you clean yourself up, and this is where Madam C.J. Walker comes in. Netflix movie did well. But it depicted how they cleaned themselves up. Mm-hmm. That even as people of color, you clean yourself up, you can get like maybe 40-50% of the whiteness. The whiteness card. Because why? You still don't have the skin color. Yeah. So we can't give you the 75-80% that we're giving these other foreigners. And you definitely can't have the 100% that what do they call them, like nationalists or something, but you're still European foreign, but
even indigenous Americans where, a lot of people, we only focus on the white or black when it comes to Jim Crow. A lot of them were dealing with the same thing, different people of native tribes who are a lot darker. We're also dealing with Jim Crow laws and stuff like that, not being able to, go to certain restaurants or certain areas in their own because of their darker skin, not being able to pass off as white. They were basically treated like the rest of the quote unquote black people.
Yeah, because I remember seeing a documentary on how in Mississippi during Jim Crow era that there was a lot of bond between blacks, if you will, and Asians. Yeah. That Asians had little corner store shops and stuff like that blacks were able to go to during that area, that basically they were shunned in other white environments and things of that nature. And it's sort of like, within concepts of polarity, you have your positive side and your negative side. And for this whole this whole product to be sold. You know, this racist society. Like you had your isms and your is, and the is the belief in the ism. So to be a racist, you have to believe in racism, which is these categories of white to black, brown, what have you. But it's more so like I said, within polarity, the positive can't be stabilized without the negative. So this positive whiteness of racism can't be stabilized without a negative. And this draws to Dr. Rachel Yehuda's research again, as we look into the intergenerational traumatic effects amongst people of color environments in Americas. Dr. Rachel Yehuda's research had structural factors, and just to name a few, it was economic resources, academic resources, employment opportunities, neighborhood safety, just to name a few. And these are the factors that were actually encompassing and therefore directly affecting aspects of culture that family households had to identify with. So whatever race you wanted to culturally identify with, it actually was encompassed by economic resources, academic resources, employment opportunities, neighborhood safety. And again, that's just naming a few that are research outlined. And we find that if anyone, just open your eyes and look across the nation, where the polarity, the negative polarity aspect of this racist society, with white being on top and with people of color, you find play more of a negative aspect within these structural factors. And this is again of intergenerational trauma, breaking down like we went through in the first show. Intergenerational trauma is different from trans. The intergenerational is that encompasses the household and things of the nature, with family and how you're brought in with the narratives and belief systems. But what surrounds that is your culture, embraces your household. But then on outside of the culture are these structural factors. And you see that economic resources and people of color neighborhoods, whether it's on a reservation. So many haven't been to native reservations to see that it's no different from hoods and ghettos that house, and even trailer parks.
Yeah, all three are very similar.
They're all the same thing. They're playing the bottom, the POC.
Because when you look at, let's take the four main points that you gave, or that Dr. Yehuda gave, the economic resources, more than likely there's not a bank. A lot of times the schools are not in the best of conditions.
They got crappy stores.
Yeah, crappy stores, high priced items.
Food deserts.
There's not a lot of access to, produce and, things that would provide a more healthy meals and stuff like that. Employment opportunities, a lot of the jobs are having to leave out of their areas, so they're not even bringing income, and wages aren't being created within their areas. And the neighborhood safety, a lot of times either they're being policed from people coming on the outside of the neighborhood, so there's no actual connection to the neighborhood and the people that are living there. It's because you have these lack of academic resources, economic and employment opportunities. You have a lot of idle time that people
violence.
are, and that now, yes, exactly. Violence, it becomes this crabs in a
Criminal
barrel.
mindsets.
Yeah, that everyone's trying to kind of fight, sort of scrapping for resources because there's barely any there. So it's just all of these factors all in one. And you really only see that in these three different areas, after us going out to the reservation, seeing the similarities.
Yeah.
When you learn in history class versus going out to see one of the reservations, you really see how, wow, we're not that different at all.
Yeah, we actually technically lived in the trailer park down in South County. You know?
Exactly.
And we were surrounded by what you would call as whites. And for the longest growing up, I never understood that you had blacks and it was Negroes and nigger, and you embraced nigger with more of a sense of empowerment. But then and that's how you see this inside your culture, how it works, culture, if you will. But then when you look on the other side with the whites, and you hear this concept called white trash.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it.
I remember us talking about
like
that.
This is why we talk about, are we the only people to this? And we at the bottom of the numbers like that. This is the only people I've ever heard call from within their people trash.
I mean, it's like, just think about, not even saying recyclable. You're just saying like,
just throw
it away.
And it's almost like, just doing this research and looking further into these concepts, especially the race card and structural socialistic factors with intergenerational trauma, that you can kind of see the philosophy where they're coming from, in a sense that your skin complexion already gives you a leg up, and you're still choosing, as what's his name, Pratt says, Henry Pratt Fairchild, you're still choosing not to improve yourself by cleaning yourself up and acting well and blah, 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 blah. And over a generation or two, you're still choosing not to do that. So we're just going to throw you away.
Right.
Right. It's funny, but it's not.
No,
but
it's really messed up, because it's like, after reading about the race card on how they had to overcome their subordination by showing through their behavior and deserving of being considered white. And so it's like,
don't you dare mix with those niggers. Don't you dare like those Mexicans. Don't you dare mess with those people of color. And you see a lot of that even on the East Coast, where they, and you see it in Chicago too, and even here in St. Louis, where you have the Hill. It's all Italians. And this area was all Dutch, and that area was mostly Irish and Scottish, and but this is where the whites live, though, and this is where we've got our education. We expect more things, and mostly, like you said, with the caste system, we expect you people of color to clean up for us, do the labor work.
What did our nephew even call it? You got weekend natives.
How they only come to the res, and it's the same thing. And I remember being out there, they call them Pahana natives, because Pahana in Hopi means white, and not gonna go into the whole history of that, but Pahana means white, and they would see how certain natives would come out there from either Phoenix or Flagstaff and stuff like that, and dressing and talking and acting a certain
sweater vest
superior way, that here come these Pahana natives, or here come these weekend natives. And it's the same thing we find in the hoods, that now you get out the hood and you think you better than us. You can take them out the trailer park, but you can't take the trailer park out of the hood. And it's all of these concepts are the same, and they're like derivatives of this race card effect.
Yeah.
This racist society where we feel like at Paradox Horizons that for us to heal the generational trauma of all of this that we've all had to endure, whether it's in a trailer park and you're dealing with different abusive households and neglect of households and all the ill effects and things of that nature, which a lot of that we'll go into in the next episode. But in this one, we just wanted to focus on the ideals of the race card and people of color, really introducing how at OHANA and Paradox Horizons, what people of color are, and it's all of us.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to our indigenous selves, the self that was before this colonialistic, arbitrary governments and stuff like that superimposed this racist society.
Yeah.
That you have to meet and earn and get to. But all this is done is really put trauma inside of our DNA over the generations, where it states that in a generation or two we might be able to get
we might.
I guess that's your pursuit of happiness. He may reach the happy point, which is a white card.
And look at what they talk about just real quickly, because I know we're getting close to the end of the show, but how they talk about people who are like flipping their dialect in order to be accepted.
Yeah.
Just to be able.
Dave Chappelle said that your white voice for interviews.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like this whole will, and how this creates such a trauma on POCs, because it's like, especially those who are more melanated, because it's like you're never really as accepted. And, because of your skin color, you can act white or what they would consider to be acceptable in order to give this card, but they never actually really give it to you. So it just really just shows how a lot of times we have to flip around from how we talk around our family and friends, and then
or even behave and act.
Yeah. So it's like, I can't do this. I mean, well, hell, now the coronavirus, if you talk too loud, you can wind up spreading it. You know, almost every, people of color, almost all of us talk loud.
And now it's almost like there's a racial thing with a social, political, racial thing. He doesn't have a mask on.
Right.
He's a Trump follower, and those Trumpites are trying to kill people of color with a virus, and it's just getting nuts, people. So we
see the similarities. We are all a lot of the same. We all just kind of want to unzip and stop trying to, just have this certain behavior, a certain way of being in order to be accepted by this imaginary group, when actually more of us have a person of color like mindset. We like to be loud. We like to have fun. We aren't as refined as they are wanting to lay out for us to be.
And you even find that a lot of quote unquote whites love coming around people of color for that same factor.
Because they can zip.
We're tired of wearing this white suit, dude. Like, you even find, like, what up, brother? They're like, hey, what's up, man? Like, damn, all right, well, cool, shit. Hey, right on, all right.
I can do this with you, right?
Hell yeah. And then it's like, hold on, here come the white person. How you doing, sir? And it's like, hi, how you doing, sir? Then he walk away. Shit, man, I was getting uncomfortable for a second. It's like white people are getting tired of it. And you even hear it out there, youth. It's like the concept now that's kind of new is stop being so white.
Yeah.
It's like this construct is starting to kind of dissolve a little bit, and we think it's awesome.
Yes.
But on the same token, we got to start dissolving this, oh, we're brown, you're white, you're black, we're brown, we're black, and you're white. And we got to dissolve that too.
Yeah.
That it's no more of that stuff, because all of that is arbitrary and government made, and that we feel like this is one of the main areas that we can reverse this curse of our ancestors, this transgenerational trauma, household by household. And that's why we wanted to kind of dive into this show, is so we can start changing that narrative in our houses. You having discussions with your children, bringing your children up, try to reintroduce the concepts of race. Try to expose to them different ideals. Share with them this history that we say here. Do your own research and look at how foreign people make up the United States.
Yeah.
And how there was interrelations, not just rapings, for crying out loud.
And there's no country called white or black.
Nowhere. Those aren't cultures. Both of them possess no ethnicity whatsoever. You can have a nationality with it, as we're all Americans, and they want you to have an American culture, but there's no for real culture and therefore ethnicity with white or black or brown for that factor.
Yeah.
So we need to start embracing our actual indigenous selves, and that starts with, if you are from a different country in America, embrace that. What are the ancient ways, the old indigenous ways from the country you're from? Instead of just saying you're white and you're from Poland, hey, I'm Polish and we like to do this, or hey, I'm from Nigeria, I'm not just black.
I mean, look at our family. I'm got Irish, French, indigenous American.
I like to say Aboriginal American, because Native American was created by the United States.
Yeah.
So I have American Aborigine, Irish, and Jewish, inside of me, and so it's just like, let's start embracing these aspects. We're doing all these DNA testing and stuff like that. Let's start identifying with it, and let's change the narrative, guys, so we can start healing this transgenerational issue, this intergenerational issue, one narrative at a time, one household at a time.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for checking us out for this episode. Again, we got Paradox Horizons. We'll have the links for that. It's paradoxhorizons.com. Feel free. It's a private community where we can discuss the different aspects, our four corners on the way that we want to try to tackle transgenerational and intergenerational trauma through having a private community where we can discuss things and have bi-weekly and weekly classes. So feel free at this time. Memberships are free. We're excited to have released that and put that together for everybody. But we're going to go ahead and sign off here. And this is the end of our second show, which is the POC Effect.
And we'll see you guys next week for the episode 3 for the Demons Within.
All right, guys. Love you. Balance, love, light above all.
Peace.
Thank you for connecting with us this episode. You've taken the time to heal our collective alongside other families all around the world. There are thousands of podcasts out there, and we are grateful the Creator led you to ours.
If you would like to check out the articles and research that we discussed on today's show, please feel free to check out our Facebook page at OHANA Means Family. And also, make sure you subscribe to OHANA so you don't miss any healing topics discussed this season and the seasons to come.
Until next time, family, balance, love, light above all. We are OHANA.